social media. And she also started a program called B School, which has had thousands and thousands of people go through to learn about entrepreneurship and learn about what does it take to start a successful business, an online business. She has been hailed by Oprah as one of the most influential personal development speakers and teachers of our time. She's been in all sorts of major media, and there she is. I see her live. We were just bragging on you, Marie. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy to be with you.
Marie, it's so great to see you. One thing you left out, Rory, I have it here. Former Success cover gal.
Bam!
Yes!
November, December 2019. I can't believe it's been that long.
I know. Time has flown, right? I mean, so much has happened since then. It feels like it's been eons. But thank you both for having me on. It's such a joy.
What happened in 2020? Did something big happen in 2020?
It's all a blur. It's all a blur. No, it's been, I think it's been so much for so many people, and, folks are resilient, but I think there's a lot of trends happening. There's a lot of exhaustion, understandable. And there's a lot of people thinking about making big changes in their life. And I think that's a positive thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, well, on the topic of changes, so Maria, we want to talk to you about Time Genius here in a minute, but I want to ask you about Everything is Figureoutable. So we mentioned this. If you're just hopping on, we're with Marie Forleo. Her book Everything is Figureoutable was the _1 New York Times bestseller. I got asked this question recently, and I loved it. And the question is there anything that you have learned since you wrote the book that you wish you could instantly insert back into the book, that you didn't know when you wrote it, and now you're like, oh man, I wish I could go back and drop that quickly into the manuscript?
The honest truth is no, because I feel like the moment when I was writing the book and how we crafted it, especially the 3 rules that we put inside Everything is Figureoutable, feel like a mini operating system, like a user's guide. And those 3 rules, if I can really fast, feel like they give us all permission to stay not only in our genius zone, but continue to use the principles and the concepts of Everything is Figureoutable into the future in such a way that it almost handles things that we can't predict yet. So rule number 1 is all problems or dreams are figureoutable. Rule number 2, if a problem or dream isn't figureoutable, it's not really a problem, it's a fact of life. For example, death, taxes to some degree, laws of nature. Now, rule number 3 is a really special one. You may not care enough to solve a particular problem or reach a particular dream, and that's okay. If you don't care about it that deeply, you want to pick something you do care about and go back to rule number 1. So it gives us this little mental container through which, when our minds go, but wait, how's a pandemic figureoutable? Or how is this figureoutable? We can kind of go, well, do I care enough about this particular issue, this particular conundrum, this particular life or societal challenge to devote my life to figuring it out? And we talk about this in the book too. You may not figure it out in your lifetime, but that doesn't mean it's not figureoutable, So we know if you go back in time, we didn't even have vaccines yet, right? And then it came about at a certain point in history. Brilliant minds were like, wow, I think we've solved polio, for example, right? So, but people started working on that ages and ages before it actually happened. And so we kind of dive into some of the more nuanced aspects of Everything is Figureoutable in the book. And the reason I bring all of that up is because for me, I feel really solid in the philosophy and really solid in the operating system. So there's nothing I would really go back and add now that I'm like, darn it, I wish I could have put that in the book.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think it's like the mindset of Everything is Figureoutable. Like what really stuck with me is just going, it's not finding the answer that is important. It's the belief that there is a way, that you can solve it, that you can figure it out. And that's inherently a belief that entrepreneurs have, that most people don't. So that was really huge. So I want to turn the conversation to what you're working on now, because I know you're working on this new concept of Time Genius. And actually, for those of you, if you don't already know about this, if you go to jointimegenius.com, Marie is leading some live trainings on this new concept. And Josh and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So what is Time Genius? Why are you talking about it now? All of a, like this is your kind of new fascination.
Yes. So let's go to the why first, because I think for me, I've been feeling, quite frankly, for years, just the pressures that are upon us, the societal expectation, just personally, like feeling like we get these messages that we have to be on as entrepreneurs 24/7, 365, that in order to be successful in the modern world, you need to be creating and producing and engaging constantly on like 10 to 12 different platforms and need to be prolifically genius. And by the way, still managing your team. And by the way, still managing your personal life and having time to meditate and your morning routine, all these things. It felt to me really unsustainable, like really unsustainable. And I get to talk with so many entrepreneurs because of B-School and because of what I do. I also have this incredible access to other leaders, right? So I'm getting to interview people and talk with them off camera and hear about their lives. And I started finding these common threads of overwhelm, exhaustion, people questioning whether or not they can actually keep going because the pressures are just so big. Folks struggling with emotional health, mental health, physical health issues. So this has been bubbling up for a while. And in all honesty, I started taking notes and creating this in 2019, right after we got off book tour, because I'm like, I've been obsessed with how do I use my time as effectively as possible since I think I got out of college. So it's been a topic for me because I myself battle with it. I'm sure everyone listening right now, and I'm curious if you guys resonate, we're ambitious. We want to get a bunch of things done.
For sure.
You want to spend quality time with your family. You want to be there as a leader for your team and your community. There's personal things and passions and all these things that you want to do. And so I've always tried to figure out what are the principles and the tools that'll help me be as effective as I can be while I'm still here on planet Earth. So all that brings us to 2020. Obviously, we all know what happened, right? So I started working on this project, and then the world gets thrust into this global pandemic, and I had to put all of my projects on ice because we were all readjusting to this new phenomenon that we're dealing with. Cut to about September of last year, right? About a year ago today. And I had been kind of dealing with some health issues that were starting to bubble up, nothing too serious, but I was getting blood work done, not feeling like myself, going like, God, what's off? I can't figure it out. The blood was coming back normal. So we cut to September. I'm on FaceTime with a dear friend of mine, my best friend, who happens to live with stage 4 cancer. Okay, so
Wow.
She lived with stage 4 cancer for a very long time. She's thriving right now, but it's just a reality that she deals with. So we're on the FaceTime, and I go, ow. I had this like pain in my side. And she's like, wait, what just happened, Marie? I was like, oh, nothing. I probably ate too much popcorn, or, I've gotten myself off gluten. I'm like, maybe I'm still eating something I shouldn't eat. So I'm like, it's no big deal. She says, She goes, you need to go get this checked out right now. And I'm like, no, it's the middle of a pandemic. I'm not going to go into the city and go to a health center and put myself at risk, all this stuff.
Right.
And she's like, non-negotiable, not negotiable. I live with stage 4 cancer. You have pain somewhere in your body that made you wince. You need to go get an ultrasound. Finally, I relented. I'm like, fine, I'll go get some tests. We'll go check it out. You'll see I'm fine. Blood test, nothing's wrong. I'm like, yay. I go get a mammogram. Thank goodness everything's okay. Then I go for my ultrasound. And, on an ultrasound for a female, you are laying on a very cold steel metal bed. You have a paper gown on. It feels very vulnerable. Again, it's like not the ideal situation. So the wand is going all over me, and my radiologist, she's like, whoa. And I said, it's not a good thing that you want to hear when someone's got a wand all over you. She said, Marie, do you know that you have a tumor the size of a grapefruit growing outside of your uterus?
Wow.
And I was like, I did not. That is something I did not know. And she said, well, it's not the only one. There's like a whole constellation. There's a lot happening. We need to get you to a gynecologist immediately. So the reason I'm telling you guys all of this, because this involves a lot of the why about how we use our time. So clearly I was terrified. I was scared. I didn't know what was going to go down. Again, middle of a global pandemic. I had just lost my grandma to COVID. I had just lost my dearest friend from college who passed away in her sleep overnight unexpectedly. So it was like this kind of stacking of being confronted with, how are we using our time? What are we doing with ourselves? And for me, asking myself the big questions, like this year threw everything into a tailspin. Am I doing everything that I really want to do in the way that I want to do it? What should the next 5 or 10 years look like? Am I chasing all of my own ideas of success, or did other things creep in from society, from
For
pressure,
sure.
from, do you know what I mean? That maybe I'm not living in a way that's 100% in alignment with my soul's deepest desire. So turns out that I had to get an urgent hysterectomy. Again, not a fun thing to do in the middle of a global pandemic. And my partner, the love of my life, Josh, we've been together over 18 years now. He couldn't be with me because he was actually booked to work on a film in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
I know. So it was just like, so I'll get to the point of the story really fast. If you guys are like, girl, wrap it up, you can just let me know. But essentially, it was right before my surgery. I was hoping to hear from Josh. He calls, just landed. He said, hey, are you sitting down? I said, yeah, I am. Is everything okay? He said, I just tested positive for COVID. You guys, I was like, like I started bawling. And I say all of this because I've been working on this program about, hey, how can I help myself and other people really dismiss this overwhelm, this overwork, this burning out, and really start using our time in a way that matters while we still have it. And all of this happened in such a short amount of time. And I said, you know what? So Josh recovered from COVID, thank goodness. I had a surgery that was successful. I had a pretty long recovery, but I'm all fine. And then I said, I have to create this program. I have to do this thing about time, because I feel like we're all reassessing. We're all saying, is what we're doing how we want to do it?
Totally.
Live in the same place, right? And I'll say this one last thing, and then I want you guys to jump in. I was like, is this just me who wants things to be different in a new way, or is it everyone? So we sent out a survey to our list. Within 3 days, we had over 7,000 responses. And I'm not talking one-word responses. I'm talking novellas. And I read every single one. And there were so many people feeling the exact same thing, that they're underwater. They can't take the stress of trying to keep it all together. They don't know how to get it all done. They feel like they have big gifts to give to the world, but they are so far behind, and they're feeling like they're cracking at the seams. So all of that is the why of why I wanted to create this program. So now I'm going to be quiet.
I love hearing the purpose behind it and the personal story that went into it. Everybody who's with us today, I'm following the comments. I want to pass along your questions and your thoughts to Marie and Rory. In addition
I particularly enjoy the great hair comment, which I really appreciate that. Thank you all, but stay focused on Marie if you can.
I was going to highlight that one, that we had one person that says Marie's hair is everything. So congrats on that, Marie.
Thank you.
We also had one from Training Ninja, who says that as a woman, there's always a feeling that you're supposed to make things feel effortless. And it really occurs to me that when you think about prioritizing and paring down and getting really focused on what you can do with the limited time you have,
yes,
that is in a way about simplifying.
Yes. Simplify to amplify. So one of the things that, in terms of being a time genius, so what does that really mean? So as I started to do research, not only into the responses from our audience, but just looking at what has really worked for me over the years, and what are the things that have really tripped me up, and how can we position this so that people aren't just doing the same old crap again and again, beating themselves up, trying to put themselves into a rigid, unrealistic system of how to get even more done. I'm like, no, we need to throw that away. So I've created this analogy, if you want to think about it in this way. There's the existing world of time stress. where you're trying to push yourself to get ever and ever more done. You feel like you're on a never-ending hamster wheel. Everything's a priority. Everything is urgent, and you're constantly just bouncing around like a friggin' ping pong ball. That's the world of time stress. It's hustle 24/7. It's never take a break. It's work harder than everyone else. And I know that very well because that's part of my history. That's part of my work ethic, you know, immigrant parents, you know what I mean? Like all of the kind of Italian American, like, oh my gosh, you got to do everything constantly all the time. And I was like, there's a different way though, and we need more wisdom in order to move forward sustainably. And this is the paradigm, the world of being a time genius, where it's not about getting more done. It's only about getting the right things done so you can blissfully ignore everything else. It's about simplify to amplify, choosing the one primary project that is most important to you right now and being so clear on that so that everything else can just really recede into the background. It's about using science and understanding how our brains work, how our bodies work, so that you can set yourself up to make your success inevitable on a daily basis. So there's all kinds of good stuff in the world and the paradigm of being a time genius. And it's not about fitting yourself into a rigid system. It's not about a particular planner. It really is about a mindset. And one of the most important pieces of it is that you believe, just like you train yourself to know that everything is figureoutable, one of the core principles of being a time genius is that there's always time for what's most important. So it's this intrinsic rooting in time abundance, time enoughness, not time scarcity, and certainly not overwhelm. One of the big mistakes that I made for years was constantly programming myself that I was overwhelmed. You would ask me, Marie, how you doing? Oh my gosh, so busy. I'm so busy, you guys. I can't even tell you how much is on my plate right now. My calendar is packed up for months. I don't have space for anything. I'm so overwhelmed. It was this constant programming, both in my own mindset and even verbally out into the world about how busy and overwhelmed I was.
We wear it as a badge of honor. A lot of us do.
Yes. And so there's pieces like that. I don't want to dominate this whole conversation. I get so passionate about it. But if we don't start to change our time mindset first, all of the planning tools, all of the apps, all of the scheduling tricks, none of that is going to work because it doesn't handle the core belief and the core paradigm that you're operating from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've spent a little bit of time. A few years ago, I did a TED Talk on time. And so I spent a lot of time wrestling with this myself. You talk about urgency, and it's just like there's something that ultra performers figure out, that results is not related to the volume of tasks that you complete, but the significance of them. And it's not just the urgency calculation, but the significance calculation, which is an assessment of how what we spend our time on today, how does that impact tomorrow and the next day and the next day? And most of the things that we say are important to us in our life are important because they have significant impacts, long-lasting impacts. They have relationships, our health, and yet we get consumed with almost like an addiction to insignificant activities just because they're urgent. And we get pulled into those. And so how do you personally sort that out, Marie? Like, you have a lot of stuff coming at you. You got lots of people to keep up with. How do you decide what gets your time and what doesn't get your time? And before you answer, for those of you hopping on, want to make sure you know, we're talking to Marie Forleo, New York Times bestselling author. She has a free training coming up. If you go to jointimegenius.com, and you can sign up. There's going to be a full training there. But for you personally, Marie, like, you got two activities to choose from, two choices, two people you could spend time with, two projects you could work on. What goes on in your brain to go, I'm going to do this one or this one?
Yes, great question. So learn this the hard way by not doing it very well for a long time and keeping myself in a state of overwhelm. What I do now is actually a process, usually at the end of every year, where I do a bit of a year in review for myself. And we just going through, like, what did I learn and achieve in the past 12 months, and really highlighting the specific things, why those specific things are important to me. That's a very good question to ask yourself. So why was it important that I wrote the book in 2019? Why was it significant that went on tour? What did I feel like I accomplished that, and how is that going to support me into the future? So just going through a year in review. Then after a few more questions, looking at, okay, well, what do I want this next 12 months to be about? What's missing? What are the things I want to experience or achieve? What are the areas of my life in terms of my health, in terms of business, in terms of relationships that are really important to me when I step back, get clear, and say, this is the direction I'm going. So around December and January, I actually create a little outline for myself for the next year ahead in terms of the projects I'm clear that I want to work on. Those can be work projects. Those can be personal projects. Those can be things related to my health. Like, so for example, here it was about getting LASIK surgery. You know what I mean? Like, there's just different little categories. So once I have that laid out, I actually then make sure that I'm not over committing to projects for the year. That's a thing that I've done so many times. I don't know if either of you have, where your eyes are bigger than your capacity to get it done. So for me, I'm always, it's like 1 or 2 business big projects, not a ton, 1 or 2. And then when I plot them in the calendar, I'm very clear when I wake up every day what the primary project or the primary initiative that I'm working on at this particular stage and season of my life, so that there's space for serendipity, there's space for magic, there's space for something to come in that might be enticing, but I'm very, very clear on what's most important when, so I don't have to make those decisions on a daily basis. It's almost pre-decided by earlier me when I was very, very clear on what I want this year to be like.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that we got while you were speaking there is from Alex Mora, and it's something that I think would seem like a hurdle, the first hurdle that a lot of people would need to face when they think about this, and that is just identifying their passion, right? Like a lot of us, like, yeah, I love my family and I feel pretty good about my job, and you know, there's this other cause
Or
that
I
I
love
like.
my job and I feel pretty good about my family.
Exactly. We have competing priorities, but
Yes.
but drilling down and identifying that one thing that's going to ignite us and illuminate all the rest of this stuff.
Yeah. So are you asking how do we identify that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no easy answer to that. In Time Genius, I think it's probably one of the most challenging modules that I had to create. And it's the funnest one for me, because cracking the code on clarity for yourself, for me, a lack of clarity is actually the cause of so much overwhelm, of so much grief, of so much indecision, and of people lost, right? So I've got a lot of different methods in the program, because you never know which exercise or which approach is going to crack somebody open and have them have that aha moment. So for me, it's worth it to think about kind of measuring things against each other. Like, okay, if I only had this 12 months and I can't get 20 things done, I could only get 2 things done. What would those be and why? And you kind of start to pit projects, experiences, initiatives against each other to see, well, what's the ROI on this in terms of, let's say for someone, building their financial wealth is really important to them for this year through their business, right? And you take a look at, okay, well, I could write a book. I could launch a new program. I might need to hire a team member. And when you just give yourself a little bit of space to evaluate things in terms of, well, what's most important to me at this stage and season of my life? Which one of these projects do I believe is going to give me the best chance of reaching what I feel is most important to me in my life? It's that type of grounded, clear self-awareness and self-inquiry that I think helps people identify what they're going to go for in this little period. And then you got to see how it goes. You know, it's not rocket science, but I think we're kind of trained just to take on too much, to not slow down enough and ask ourselves the most important questions of what we're going after and why it matters. And again, we walk people through some processes to do this. And when you do that, I think people begin to feel from the inside out like, oh, this is what really is most important to me right now. And I need to then start to organize my life around making this particular idea or project or initiative happen.
I love how you talk about, you've said a couple different times, like you put like these almost like constraints on yourself of how much time you're spending doing things so that you allow space for the magic. You allow space for the serendipity. And I would say the biggest difference, like, so my wife and I have been business partners since 2006, and the company that we sold our first company in 2018, and the difference between what we did then and what we do now is what we used to do was just work nonstop. What we do now is we found that if you put constraints on your time, constraints are sort of catalysts for creativity. And it allows that space for the magic to show up. And it also causes you to think differently. Because if you know, oh, I can work 12 hours a day, you think differently than if you go, I have 6 hours today. What is the thing that really needs to get done, and how can I get it done? It's inspiring to me personally to hear you talk about that, Marie, like the space. I don't think we leave enough space for magic. It's almost it's like a faith thing. It's like, I have to work so hard because I don't believe that God or the universe would ever gift me something. And so I have to take full control over it. That's inspiring thought.
I think there's also another piece to it too. And this is kind of the underbelly of entrepreneurship, the underbelly of folks like us who, again, I'm a champion of entrepreneurs. This is something that I still battle with. It is an addiction to doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
An addiction to filling every moment of every day, because we're doing this, right? We're like, want to prove our worth. We want to get ahead, and when you start to step back and really ask the bigger questions, like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, get ahead to where? Life is happening now. And, so it depends on where people are, I think, in not only their business or career journey, but also their life journey. Then I've been doing this for 20 years. And so I couldn't have had the perspective I have now when I was 23 and first started. I was so terrified, right? All I wanted to do was be able to pay my bills and climb out of debt and try and contribute to society. But now, in my 40s, where I'm like having a little perspective, I'm like, wait a minute, the same things that helped me become successful early on are actually going to drive me into the ground now. You have to mature and change how you're viewing things and how you see things. And I think the other beautiful thing that comes with just age and getting a bit older, again, this for me was a gift of COVID, a gift of what I dealt with my health crisis, a gift of losing people, a gift of just facing mortality in some ways, is you go, do I really want to work 10, 12 hours a day?
Right.
Really the most effective? Am I really going to be on my deathbed going like, my God, I just didn't do that other Instagram story, or I didn't have 3 posts up a day? It's like, who gives a crap? Did I actually spend time? Was I in nature? Was I fulfilling myself? And I want to go back to the other piece that you said about leaving that space. It's like when you identify what's most important, it's a lot easier to ignore what's not. But the other thing is this, I think breaking the addiction to doing only comes when you give yourself space to just be. And we know this from some of the world's greatest thinkers. Oftentimes breakthrough creativity doesn't come when you're grinding away in front of the computer.
Totally.
When you're on the walk to the grocery store, or you're in the bathroom washing your hair, or you're vacuuming, or you know what I mean? You're just doing the mundane things of life. And if we don't leave enough space for that, and we're always torturing ourselves in our heads, not only is our experience of life miserable, but we're making ourselves less effective and less creative as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's good. That addiction to doing, that's gonna stick with me. And I actually heard a mentor one time said that as a performer, your job is to do, but as a leader, your job is to make sure it gets done. And that's a maturing thing. But that addiction of doing is, oh my gosh, that's so good.
Can I comment on, I'm seeing the comments come through, and I want to mention something that I saw so much, and I'm curious if both of you resonate with this as well. So I think it was Alyssa. She said, basically, whenever she slows down, or whenever she stops, or whenever she tries to take a rest, she feels guilty that she's not being more productive.
That's so crazy.
Does anyone, have you guys, I've had it.
For sure.
I've had it, right? It's just like, if you're like, wait a minute, I should be doing something more productive. This, my friends, is a symptom of us being entrenched in the mindset, the paradigm, and the culture of time stress. It's a sickness. that if you're not producing 24/7, that if you just stop and take a break, if you take a nap, if you just want to look at the sky and watch the clouds go, that there's a voice that comes in that says, you are bad, you are lazy, you should be doing something more productive right now. How sick is that? It's just, it's so unhealthy. And so that's why I get so passionate about this particular program and this topic, because I think that what we are missing, and there's a great quote about this, we're drowning information and we're starving for wisdom. And I think to lead into the future, we are going to need to lead from a place of wisdom, and wisdom doesn't come if you're busy 24/7 like this.
Rory, I got to say, knowing that Marie has this all top of mind, I'm like all the more honored that she made time for us today, right?
I know. And y'all, if we mentioned this earlier, if you go to jointimegenius.com, Marie is hosting some free live trainings on this whole new area of work, obviously, that is very important to her, that she has been exploring. Also, if you're not following her, click in the top left corner there where it says the Success Room, click it, and then make sure that you follow Marie. Stay plugged into what she's doing. Marie, I know you have a tight schedule. We want to keep you sharp to 1 o'clock. We're so grateful for your contribution, and gosh, just we just wish you the best and significance in everything you're doing.
Thank you both for what you do. Success Magazine, I've been such a huge fan of y'all for so long, and yes, thank you. Thanks for continuing to help all of us stay focused on our contribution, stay focused on how we can continue to reach higher and do better and share more of our gifts with the world. So thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for listening today. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Bye,
Thanks,
Marie.
Bye. See you guys soon. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Josh,
Rory,
wow.
she's amazing. Always has been. This new sort of area of her attention is going to serve so many people. What were your sort of takeaways from that?
I mean, so many takeaways. I think the addiction to doing is a huge one. But I think just hearing her talk about how she deliberately leaves space for magic to happen and serendipity, and it's just kind of that trust and that faith to go, I don't have to do it all myself. Like, I'm going to work hard, but I'm going to allow room for something magical to happen, for someone to show up and to help. And I just think that's powerful and freeing.
Definitely so. So grateful to have had some of her time, and grateful to have had all of your time, Rory, you too. A lot of people asked, is this going to be available for replay? If you came in halfway through, then follow along with Success Magazine. The whole thing will be on our IGTV page. You can find it there. Thanks for stopping into the Success Room, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks, y'all. See you next Thursday. Bye.
So long.